soon as I started school, I learned that my brother James Allen wasn't like other kids. I remember how Mama fussed over me that first morning, braiding my hair so tight I thought my eyes would pop right out of my head. I had 3 new dresses made from flour sacks that she saved, and she always had a way with a needle and a thread. Almost looked like they came from the Sears and Roebuck catalog. She'd torn apart an old coat and sewed me a jacket with a little fur collar made from rabbit skin my daddy gave her from his traps. We set off down the trail, me, Mama, and James, and it took us the longest time. James would wander off, looking at the sky and rocking back and forth, like he does. Of course, we didn't know about autism back then, and when I asked why James Allen was like he was, my grandma Mammy, who had taught school, read all kinds of books, and had some strange notions, well, she told me that God had made life to be like a dance. And James Allen just hears different music, merrily, she said. I wasn't sure what she meant, not for a long time. I remember that first day of school, walking down the trail, hearing the songbirds and the low hum of bees in the early morning air. Like always, James stopped at the old footbridge that crossed over Blue Creek. Mom had to coax him across. The only log was slick and mossy, and he'd slipped off when he was little. He was carried downstream a couple 100 feet before he grabbed a hold of a limb that hung out over the water. But we finally got to the school, and there was my very best friend, Molly Kennedy, jumping up and down in front, and her red curls bright in the sun. That girl still has more freckles than you can count, but her hair went plum white before she was 40. Well, she started squealing my name, and I broke away from my mama and I ran to her. Molly and me were hugging and laughing, and that's when I heard Corey Hargrove's voice. The Hargroves had lived just up the trail from us since before I was born. 7 kids crowded in that little cabin, and Corey the oldest. Like his daddy, Corey's voice could cut like a whip. "Hey, dummy," he yelled. "Hey, you, dummy." There was a crowd of big boys with him. Ralph Teeter, Andy Watson, and my own cousin, Donald Arthur. They were all in 5th grade, same as my brother, if he had ever gone to school, that is. James Allen had bent down and picked up a maple seed, called them airplanes, the kind with the 2 wings. He held it high in the sky, then let it drop and followed it with his eyes, round and round, and he watched it flutter to the ground. "Retard!" Corey Hargrove shouted. Then Ralph and Andy joined in. "Retard!" I saw my cousin Donald give a quick look towards my mama, but then he yelled it too. "Retard! Retard!" It seemed like every person there stopped and looked at my brother, that name ringing out across the playground. Worst of all, James Allen never paid no mind, just kept picking up that maple seed, holding it high and dropping it, watching it float to the ground. Before I even knew I was going to do it, I ran over and started beating on Corey with my fists, hitting him over and over and kicking him. He just held me off. Then I felt somebody grab hold of me. It was my mama, and her face was so red. There was no mistaking she was mad as an old settin' hen. "Marilee Wilcox, do you know Jesus is watching you right now? How can you disappoint our Lord? Don't you remember his words about turning the other cheek?" My mama was the most devout Christian you have ever seen, more faithful even than her own mama, who said some had the gift of healing. Talking to Jesus was as natural as breathing to Mama. After all, she told us, Jesus came to the earth to show us how to live. Why not go to him with our troubles? Right then, I was more worried about my troubles with Daddy when he heard how I had spit on Corey's boots and kicked him in the shins, and it just being the first day of school. I was going to get a licking for sure. "But Mama," I started, "they called James a retard." "Hush, girl," she said. and I knew she meant business. I didn't get a licking, though. Waiting for it through supper was almost as bad as getting it. Mama never told Daddy, not then and not later. Every day after that, Mama walked me to school. Every day James Allen went with us. I begged her to let me walk on my own, but she didn't, not until I was 9 years old and in the 4th grade. Well, I kept turning the other cheek. Finally, the boys got so tired and quit calling my brother names, but I saw the way the kids looked at him, and year after year I heard the whispers. Truth is, I was ashamed of him. By the time I was in high school, I had lived for a long time knowing my only brother was never gonna make the winning basket at state, or place first in the science fair, much less remember to tie his shoes. That was the year I was 16. I brought home some papers that told about a place where people like James Allen could stay. And Mama threw them in the fire and told me not to bring it up again. By the time I started senior year, I had the prettiest little promise ring from Hubert Mason, and he was planning to get married come summer. And that year started out slow, what with me thinking it was a waste of time, considering the wedding. Halloween come and went, then it was Thanksgiving. We piled in the truck and drove over to Grandma Mammy's. Daddy had shot a turkey, and nobody could make sweet taters like my grandma. Mama had baked 2 dried apple pies and mincemeat. After that, Christmas seemed to come on us all at once. Maybe it was 'cause of the bad news. Daddy had come home the first week of December and said the bosses back east had closed down the mine. Put nearly every man in the holler out of work. We all knew there wasn't going to be much Christmas, but even at 17, I still had hopes. On Friday, I had seen the Christmas things Mr. Claybird had put in the store window. Molly had her eye on a plaid pleated skirt, but I wanted this blue Angora sweater set with tiny pearl buttons. The night before Christmas Eve, word went around that there was a giveaway down at the First Methodist. Church folks up to Cincinnati had sent boxes of toys and clothes. I heard my Mama and Daddy arguing in whispers. Mama said, "These kids is going to have a Christmas whatever it takes." They went down there, though I could tell Daddy's pride was hurt something fierce. I knew how he felt. Back then I'd do without before I'd wear folks' charity and hand-me-downs. And about 8 o'clock there came a pounding on the door. Like always, James Allen paid no mind. When I opened it, there stood Corey Hargrove. "It's my Mama," he said. "Daddy went to the giveaway, but she wasn't feeling good, and now the baby's coming and something's wrong." "My folks is gone," I told him. "Someone's got to do something," he said. "She's gonna die." Well, we bundled up and followed Corey up the trail. Inside their cabin, the kids huddled near the fire. There was, with a little bedroom off to the back and a big, high bed and Corey's Mama in it, and I could see the sheets dark with blood. I went to her, and I took her hand, and her eyes was wild with the pain of it, and she was talking crazy. I hadn't never been to a birth except for last year's calf and the kittens that come every spring. So at first, I just kept stroking her hand. And that's when James Allen stepped forward, his eyes as wild as Mrs. Hargrove's, his hands shaking like he had palsy. He reached out and put a hand on the mound of her belly and closed his eyes. And I could probably count on my fingers the number of times James speaks in a week, but he surely did that night. "Jesus," he said, his voice as gentle as a breeze. "Save them. Save them." And I just closed my eyes tight, and I prayed, sending the words silently up to where I hoped he was listening. "My Mama says you're always with us. Jesus, be with us tonight." That was it. That is until the baby slid right out on the bed, silent and still. And I bent over and wiped its little face, and then I put my lips on the baby's mouth and breathed as soft as could be. And then again, just like I knew what to do. The baby let out a cry, at first as weak as a new lamb, and then getting louder and stronger. I put the baby girl in her mama's arms, and I was crying, and so was Mrs. Hargrove. Corey turned away from me, but I could see him wiping the tears. I got things cleaned up, put the little kids to sleep on the pallet up in the loft, and then told James Allen that it was time to go. He was sitting at the kitchen table, twirling a bowl round and round, watching it spin. And I called him again, and he pulled himself up from the table. Then Corey came up. He put out his hand to me and shook mine, saying, "Thank you, Marilee. Thank you." Then he put out a hand to my brother. But James Allen was looking at the fireplace, watching the flames. And Corey put his hand down, but he didn't turn away. "Thank you, James Allen," he said, though James never looked up. "Thank you." Walking down the path towards home, I saw the first flakes of snow. And James Allen kept stopping to look at the sky. Down by the big elm tree, he stopped and pointed up through the branches. And sure as I'm standing here, there was one star brighter than all the rest, way up in the sky, right over the Hargroves' place. "The Jesus star," James whispered. "The Jesus star." And then he began to rock back and forth like he does. I put my arm around his shoulder, real careful, knowing how he hates being touched, and I just held it there, looking up at that star, and then back at my big brother standing there in the snow, his tongue stuck out to catch the icy flakes. Right then, I thought about Pastor Hodgkins always preaching how Jesus was coming again. He'd pound the pulpit and shout, "You better be ready. You better be ready." You know, since the night Marilee James Hargrove was born, I know as well as I know anything that Jesus is here with us, as real as you and me. And like Grandma Mammy told me, he never gives up on us, not a one of us. Just keeps inviting us to listen to the music and join in the dance. Now you be careful going home. And don't forget, Jesus loves you, and so do I.
Over the mountains till the break of dawn, into the light of perfect day, it will give out a lovely ray. Oh, beautiful star of Bethlehem, shine on, shine on. Oh, beautiful star, beautiful star, Bethlehem, Bethlehem, shine upon us until the glory dawns. Give us the light to light the way unto the land of perfect day. Oh, beautiful star, Bethlehem, shine on, shine on. Oh, beautiful star, the hope of rest for the redeemed, the good and blessed. Yonder in glory when the crown is won. For Jesus now, that star divine, brighter and brighter he will shine. Oh, beautiful star, Bethlehem, shine on, shine.